The betrayal didn't come with shouting. Came with paper. I remember the exact moment. My brother Aidan slid a thick manila folder across our dining table like it was already decided. Like my signature was just a formality. His smile was the worst part. That confident, patient smile people wear when they think you have no choice. "We just need your signature," he said. My mother sat beside him. Her hands were folded. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Be strong," she whispered before I even opened the folder. Before I even understood what I was looking at. Everyone was watching. My father stood near the kitchen doorway. My uncle sat in the corner like a witness. This wasn't a meeting. It was an execution disguised as a family discussion. My name is Leah, and that was the moment I realized I was alone in a room full of people I'd loved my entire life. I opened the folder slowly. My hands were shaking. Every role I held, every decision I made, every authority I had, was being transferred. Erased. Given to Aidan. I looked up at my mother. "How long have you known about this?" She didn't answer. That silence told me everything. No one explained the documents that day. They just waited. The silence pressed against my ears like a physical weight. I scanned clauses written in perfect legal language, the kind designed to sound professional while quietly stealing your life. Each sentence removed something from me. My authority over family finances. My access to property decisions. My voice in anything that mattered. This wasn't temporary. It wasn't a test run. It was permanent. "This is what's best for everyone," Aidan said, straightening in his chair. He said it like he was doing me a favor. Like I should be grateful. My mother nodded without looking at me. She just stared at the table. My father cleared his throat but said nothing. I realized then that they'd all agreed beforehand. This meeting wasn't to discuss anything. It was to present a decision already made. I was the only one who didn't know. I felt my chest tighten. Not with anger yet. With the specific pain of complete abandonment. "Can I have time to think about this?" I asked quietly. Aidan exchanged a glance with my mother. "Quick look. Practice. We need it signed today," he said. "There are legal timelines." There weren't. I would find that out later. I closed the folder without signing anything and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard my mother whisper something to Aidan. I didn't hear the words, but I heard the tone. It was relief. That night, alone in my room, I examined every page of the folder I'd taken with me. The signature line carried a timestamp. Date. I stopped breathing. The documents were drafted 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks before this meeting. 3 weeks before anyone told me anything. Called Aidan. "When was this drafted?" "Recently," he said too quickly. Too smoothly. But I'd already memorized the date. I'd seen it printed right there on the document. "Aidan, the date on here says." "Leah, we don't need to do this over the phone," he interrupted. "Let's talk about it tomorrow." Hung up. I sat on my bed for a long time, holding that folder. The date on those documents meant that my mother had known for weeks. My father had known. They'd all sat across from me at dinner, at family events, pretending everything was normal while they planned to remove me. The deception wasn't just the folder. It was every day they didn't tell me. Every moment they let me believe I was still part of this family's future. I understood then. I hadn't just been betrayed. I'd been studied. They'd watched me, planned without me, and decided exactly how and when to strike. My hands stopped shaking. A different kind of clarity took over. My mother found me in the kitchen the next morning. "You handled that well yesterday," she said, moving past me to make coffee. "This is just how families survive." I stared at her. "By lying to each other. By protecting each other," she corrected. "You weren't ready to hear this. We needed time to prepare the documents, to make sure everything was legal and fair." "Fair?" I laughed. Sounded broken. "You drafted this without me. You signed documents without my input. That's not fair." My mother turned to face me. She looked tired. Guilty maybe, but not sorry enough. "When did you know?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just repeated what she always said when things got hard. Be strong. I don't want to be strong, I said. I want to know why my own mother kept this from me. She set down her coffee cup. Because I knew you'd fight it. And I wanted peace. There it was. The real answer. She'd chosen her own comfort over my right to know what was happening to me. I understood then. My mother had chosen a side long ago. Not out of love for me, but out of fear of conflict with Aiden. Out of some twisted belief that managing me was easier than defending me. She left the kitchen without finishing her coffee. I stood there, holding her abandonment, and felt something harden inside me. Within days, the family narrative had completely shifted. I was no longer the victim of a deliberate betrayal. I was stepping back. I was taking a break from responsibility. I was overwhelmed and grateful for Aiden's help. Every word softened the theft. Every word rewrote what had actually happened. My uncle told someone who told me that I'd apparently been struggling with my roles. I'd never said that. I'd never felt that. But the story had been created without me, and now it was spreading through the family like truth. At a family dinner, my aunt mentioned how understanding I was being. How mature of me to step aside. I didn't correct her. I just smiled and said nothing. Because I was beginning to understand something important. Confrontation would only give them more material for their narrative. If I fought back, I'd be difficult. If I protested, I'd be emotional. If I demanded answers, I'd be ungrateful. I'd already been written out of my own story. The only way forward was to let them think they'd won. But I wasn't stepping back. I was stepping aside to see clearly. The difference would matter soon. A cousin mentioned something to me at a family event that made my blood go cold. She said she'd heard from my mother that I was concerned about inheriting too much responsibility too quickly. I'd never said that. I'd never even thought it. But it was Aiden's justification. I'd heard him use those exact words to explain why he needed to take over. My cousin didn't know she was repeating his lie. She thought she was repeating something I'd confessed to my mother. I smiled politely and changed the subject. But inside I started counting. Counting every lie. Every time they'd put words in my mouth. Every time they'd created a false version of me to justify what they'd done. By the time I went home that night, I'd counted 8 separate lies already. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder on my desktop called Documentation. I knew I'd need it. Over the next 2 weeks, I became obsessive about collecting evidence. Texts, emails, old drafts, voicemails that I'd saved for other reasons but now took on new meaning. I didn't know yet what I needed these for. I just knew that memory alone wouldn't protect me. Memory could be rewritten. Memory could be questioned. But documents couldn't lie. I organized everything by date, by person, by theme. The patterns formed quickly once I removed emotion from the process. Once I stopped feeling betrayed and started thinking like someone building a case. Aiden had made contradictory statements in emails. My mother had claimed she'd suggested things that she'd actually strongly opposed. My uncle had mentioned a conversation that never actually happened. He'd invented it to support Aiden's narrative. It was like looking at a building and suddenly seeing all the cracks beneath the paint. I saved everything in encrypted folders. Duplicates on a separate drive. I told no one what I was doing. I asked about them casually one afternoon, like the question meant nothing. Hey Aiden, do you have the original draft of those documents from that first meeting? He laughed it off. Why would you need that? My mother intervened too quickly, the way she always did when conversations got uncomfortable. She smoothed the air like she was painting over something ugly. It doesn't matter now, she said. The final version is what counts. But I already had copies. I'd found them in an old email thread when I was digging through conversations. The original drafts showed something different from the final version. Entire sections had been removed. Protections I'd suggested, amendments that would have kept me more involved, had been deleted between the first draft and the final document. The omissions were intentional. They'd literally erased my voice from the papers before presenting them to me. My brother grew bold after a few weeks of silence from me. He began speaking for me at family events. "Leah won't be interested in that," he'd say about decisions that involved me directly. "Leah's fine with this," he'd announce without asking. He even corrected me once when I mentioned something about my own preferences. "No, you said you wanted it this way," he told me in front of our father. I hadn't. But power makes people careless. It makes them believe their own lies. It makes them think they're untouchable. I watched him get more reckless every week. More comfortable. More certain that I'd accepted my erasure. He didn't understand that I was waiting. That I was watching. That every careless word he spoke was being stored away. And then it happened. At a family gathering with about 20 people present, Aiden made a statement about my transfer of authority. He said it was my idea. He said I'd requested it. I was standing right there. And I corrected him quietly. "I never asked for this." The room got very still. Aiden laughed nervously. "Well, you didn't object." "Because I wasn't given the chance," I said calmly. Someone in the room shifted uncomfortably. Someone else looked away. For the first time, Aiden looked uncertain. I began paying attention to reactions instead of faces. Who shifted their weight when Aiden made a claim? Who avoided eye contact? Who already knew the truth but said nothing? Silence told me more than any confrontation ever could. My uncle looked guilty. My father looked ashamed. My mother looked tired and sad. But most importantly, one person, my cousin James, was watching me with recognition. Like he'd seen this pattern before. Like he understood. After the gathering, I found a note in my pocket. His phone number and 2 words. "We should talk." He was the first person to reach out privately since the betrayal. He was also the only person who'd been truthful with me from the beginning. James showed me emails that he'd been sent by my mother weeks earlier. In them, she was asking him to help manage Leah during the transition. To make sure I didn't overreact to the changes. To convince me it was for my own good. He'd refused. He'd deleted the emails. And he'd been quiet since then, watching to see what would happen. "I should have told you," he said. "But I wasn't sure if you already knew." "I didn't," I said. "But thank you for this." He showed me other emails too. Between Aiden and my mother. Strategic. Calculated. In one, Aiden referred to me as a risk factor in their plans. In another, my mother worried about Leah's resistance. They treated my exclusion like a business problem to be managed. I thanked James and said nothing more about it. I just absorbed what he'd given me and filed it away with everything else. My name appeared as a risk in my own family's plans. Kept that word close. Seeing your name reduced to a liability does something to you. It strips away the last piece of hope that maybe this is all a misunderstanding. Maybe they didn't mean harm. Maybe there's still a chance they see you as family. I felt oddly calm when I read it. The shock had worn off. The pain had crystallized into something harder. Something more useful. Now I understood the full scale of what they'd done. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment. This wasn't a mistake that spiraled. This was a premeditated, strategic removal of me from my own family's future. And they'd done it while smiling. While pretending to protect me. While asking me to be strong. I was calm because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Not mistakes. Not miscommunication. Conspiracy. The invitation to a major family gathering arrived 2 months after the initial betrayal. Came late. Like an afterthought. Like they'd remembered I existed and felt obligated to include me. The letter was designed to signal unity and healing. "We hope you'll join us for a family celebration," it said. "We miss you." They missed me. As if I'd left. As if I'd walked away instead of being systematically pushed out. Accepted immediately. By email. Polite. Warm. Grateful. They had no idea I had a folder full of documentation. They had no idea I'd spent 3 months preparing. They thought I'd accepted my role as the quiet, understanding daughter who'd moved aside. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning to give them one last chance to tell the truth. And if they didn't take it, everything would change. The gathering was at my uncle's house. About 30 family members. Everyone dressed up. Everyone smiling. I arrived early and helped my mother in the kitchen. We didn't talk about anything real. Just recipes and small talk. During the dinner, people praised me for being so understanding about the transition. The word landed heavy every single time. "You're handling this so well," my aunt said. "Leah's always been mature," my uncle added. "We're so lucky to have someone so gracious in the family," my mother said, squeezing my hand. I smiled anyway. Thanked them. I accepted their praise for accepting the unacceptable. I was performing the role they'd written for me. But I was watching the exits, planning the moment, waiting for the opening. Then my mother asked me to say something. She stood up, clinked her glass and said, "Leah has something she'd like to share with everyone." All eyes turned to me. This was the moment. I stood up slowly. I kept my expression warm, grateful. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," I said. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for caring about this family." The room relaxed. They thought I was sealing the story they'd written. I appreciate how everyone has handled the changes in our family structure. And I'm grateful for the chance to reflect on what matters most. My mother smiled. Eden smiled. My father looked relieved. "I'm looking forward to a new chapter," I continued. "And I'm excited to see how things unfold." Then I sat down. Short, neutral, gracious, perfect. The room exhaled. They clinked their glasses. They thought the story was sealed. That I'd finally accepted the narrative they'd written and was ready to move forward. My mother couldn't meet my eyes when she sat back down. Deep down she knew. I sat in the car for 20 minutes after leaving that gathering, my hands gripping the steering wheel. What I'd just done, giving that speech, staying calm, playing the role, had cost me more than I expected. The performance was exhausting. Every smile, every thank you, every moment of gracious acceptance had been a lie layered on top of their lies. But it had worked. They believed I'd moved on. They believed I'd accepted the narrative. They believed I was broken enough to stop fighting. I looked at my phone. 17 missed texts from family members. Messages of support. Messages of love. Messages designed to reinforce the fiction we'd all just participated in. I didn't read them all. I just started the car and drove home in silence. Because I knew something they didn't. This gathering had given me the final piece I needed. They'd all been together. They'd all had the same conversation. They'd all reinforced the same story. Which meant they were all invested in maintaining it. Which meant when the truth came out, it would shatter every single one of them simultaneously. I allowed myself one small smile as I drove through the dark streets. It would all come out soon. Later that night, my mother pulled me aside in the hallway. "That was beautiful," she said. "What you said at dinner." I didn't respond. "Leah, I need to ask you something." She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "You're not going to reopen things, are you? You're not going to bring up what happened?" Fear leaked through her concern. "Why would I do that?" Asked gently. "Because it would hurt people. It would hurt this family. And it would hurt you most of all." She was warning me. Threatening me, actually. In the most motherly way possible. "I understand," I said. And I did understand. I understood that she wanted me to stay silent forever. To internalize the betrayal. To protect them from consequences. I decided right then that I would never confront her privately. Never give her the chance to talk me down. Never let her explain or defend or soften the truth. When the time came, it would be public. And they wouldn't see it coming. I waited. Weeks passed. Eden relaxed. He stopped being careful with his words. He spoke more confidently about his decisions. About the family structure he'd created. Stories drifted through the family. Details changed. Eden embellished. My parents added their own edits. But the core lie remained the same. I'd stepped aside voluntarily. Truth ages better than lies, though. Lies need constant reinforcement. They need agreement. They need people to keep their stories straight. During those weeks, I also reached out to a lawyer quietly. I didn't tell anyone. I simply wanted to know my options. What was legally possible? What protections existed? The lawyer reviewed my documentation and told me something that changed everything. I had a case. Strong one. Aiden had acted without my consent on family assets. My mother had participated knowingly. The timeline proved premeditation. But I didn't want a legal battle. Not yet. I wanted the truth first. Aiden wasn't that disciplined. I watched him contradict himself. Claim things that didn't match earlier statements. Create new justifications that conflicted with old ones. And then he made the mistake that broke everything open. He scheduled a clarifying meeting, extended family included. He said he wanted to address lingering questions about the family structure. He was going to consolidate his version of the truth while everyone was in one room. He didn't know I'd been waiting for exactly this moment. I printed everything. Duplicates, emails, timestamps, contradictory statements. The original drafts with my suggestions erased. The final versions with Aiden's name replacing mine. I organized it chronologically. By theme. By lie. No emotion. Just order. I created binders. Color-coded tabs. Cross-referenced everything. I wasn't going to accuse. I wasn't going to shout or cry or beg them to understand. I was going to present. And let the evidence speak. The meeting was scheduled for a Saturday. Aiden had rented a meeting room at a hotel. Very official, very staged. I arrived with my documentation in a leather folder, as calm as if I was going to a business meeting. Because that's what this was. Business. The business of reclaiming the truth. The meeting started with Aiden talking about the family's future. About his vision. About his plans. No one asked questions for the first 20 minutes. Then I raised my hand. I have a factual question, I said calmly. Aiden smiled. He thought I was playing along. Of course. You mentioned that I agreed to step aside from my financial responsibilities in July. Is that accurate? He nodded confidently. Yes. You expressed concerns about July 2nd. I interrupted gently. Because the documents you presented to me were drafted on June 8th. His smile froze. If I agreed in July, I continued, how were the documents drafted a month earlier? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I mean, we drafted them before to be ready, he said awkwardly. In case you agreed. In case. I repeated. Or before you told me. Silence stretched across the room. My mother suddenly looked very small. I slid a document forward. The original draft. This was the first version, I said. Notice the section on line 47. The one about retained authority in financial decisions. My mother leaned forward to look. That section, I continued, appears in every draft except the final one. Someone removed it. Aiden tried to explain. That was just a preliminary thought. Whose preliminary thought? Yes. Because I suggested it. And I suggested it in emails to you personally. My mother tried to intervene. To protect him. Leah, the final version was what mattered. Did you remove that section, Mom? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Because I have the email where Aiden asked you to take it out. He said I wouldn't understand the implications of keeping it. My mother's hands started shaking. He was right, I said. I didn't understand. Not until I saw the evidence. My uncle stood up. Leah, I think we need to take a break. We're not breaking, I said calmly. There are 12 more contradictions in the documentation. We're going through all of them. I didn't accuse. I presented. I slid documents forward one at a time. I asked simple, factual questions. I let Aiden answer. And then I showed him where he was wrong. Each lie unraveled itself without my help. The room got colder with every document. My father wouldn't look at anyone. My mother was crying silently. Aiden got redder, angrier, until finally he raised his voice. "You're twisting things," he shouted. "You always were the problem. You were always too dramatic, too difficult." "I'm presenting documents," I said without raising my voice at all. "I'm not adding emotion. I'm not interpreting. I'm showing you dates and signatures and your own words." "This is bullshit," he yelled, standing up. And that's when everyone saw it. Not the evidence, not the documentation, but the anger, the fear, the desperation of someone who'd been caught. His anger did what my calm presentation alone couldn't. It made the manipulation visible. My mother broke down completely after that. She put her face in her hands and cried like something inside her had finally cracked. "I chose peace over fairness," she said through tears. "I just wanted everyone to be okay. I didn't want conflict." No one interrupted her. The truth landed hard because it was the most honest thing anyone had said in months. She'd known everything. She'd participated in the betrayal. And she'd done it because managing conflict felt more important than protecting her daughter. My father put his arm around her. Felt nothing. Aiden realized he was alone. That his anger had exposed him. That the documentation was real and his explanations didn't matter. He sat back down heavily. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Those words meant nothing. They came too late. They came only because he'd been caught, not because he'd ever cared about the harm he'd caused. My mother looked at me with red eyes. "I chose peace over fairness," she repeated. "And I've regretted it every single day since." I didn't respond. Apologies can only come from a place of genuine remorse. And remorse requires the person to fully understand the harm they've caused. My mother was sad about the consequences of her choices, not about the choices themselves. There was a difference, an important one. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked. "Because you didn't ask," I said. "You made a decision and executed it. And then when I found out, you asked me to be strong instead of asking me to forgive." She flinched at that. My uncle suggested we take a break. Get some water. Come back to this with clearer heads. I stood up. "There's nothing else to discuss," I said. "I've reclaimed my authority, my access, my voice. Effective immediately. I'm reinstating my position and reversing the transfers." "Leah," my father started. "Let's not make any decisions right now." "I've had 3 months to think," I said. "I've made my decision." I walked out of that room without waiting for responses. I didn't demand apologies. I didn't negotiate terms. I didn't ask for explanations I'd already heard 100 times. I simply reclaimed what was mine. My access to family finances. My voice in property decisions. My authority in matters that affected me directly. Quietly. Legally. Completely. The documents Aiden had forced me to sign were challenged. Reversed. Rendered void. He tried to fight it, but he had no ground to stand on. He'd created the evidence himself. He'd documented his own deception. My mother didn't fight it. She just accepted it like she accepted everything, with quiet sadness and no real change. My father apologized privately, multiple times. I accepted his apologies without agreement, without forgiveness, without false comfort that it was okay. I left their house last, before Aiden, before my mother, before anyone else. I walked to my car, put my documentation folder on the passenger seat, and drove away. Behind me I heard my mother calling my name. I didn't look back. I didn't destroy my family. They did that themselves by choosing deception over honesty, by choosing power over fairness, by choosing comfort over courage. I simply stopped protecting their lies. I stopped smoothing over the rough edges. I stopped accepting blame for their betrayals. I stopped being strong in the way they wanted, which was to say, silent. What I took back was my voice. My right to speak the truth without apology. My refusal to participate in a narrative designed to erase me. My ability to see people clearly and act accordingly. Strength, I learned, isn't silence. It's not accepting what's unacceptable just to keep the peace. It's not being strong when they're asking you to absorb pain and call it love. Strength is precision. It's documentation. It's waiting for the right moment. It's presenting evidence calmly and letting lies collapse under their own weight. It's walking away when there's nothing left to salvage. My family is still broken. Aiden still struggles with what I exposed. My mother still carries the weight of her choice. My father still regrets his silence. But I'm not bound by their pain anymore. I'm not responsible for managing their guilt. I'm not obligated to soften the truth so they can feel better about the lies they told. Took back my life. And that, in the end, was the only revenge that ever mattered. The truth. Delivered precisely. At exactly the right moment. When they couldn't deny it. When they couldn't rewrite it. When they had to finally see what they'd done. And live with it.